Hey everyone, I'm going to be showing you how to build applications with Holochain and React today. So if you don't know about Holochain, it's a new development framework that's very similar to blockchains, but instead of being a massive distributed ledger that's shared by everyone, everyone gets their own private distributed ledgers and chooses to share those with other people. That's just a very high-level summarization, but I would really suggest you go through and dig into their documentation and their papers because it's a really interesting project, and I'm just going to help you get up and running with a React app. So if you want more information, you can go to holochain.org, and then I'm going to go through a tutorial on developer.holochain.org. That's going through Holo World. And so the first thing you're going to do, you should probably just install Holochain. It's a really basic tutorial on the homepage, and that should only take a couple of minutes. Once you have the command line tool set up, then just come back and pop in here. So the first thing we're going to do is just set up a new project. So hc dev init is just saying new Holochain developer and project start. So hc dev init hello. And so I'm just going to show you guys really quickly what the file structure is like on a Holochain project just when it gets started. It's really pretty basic. So we have three different directories: DNA, test, and UI. And then you have your agent.txt, which is just describing who you are as an agent. Holochain is an agent-based model, so identifying who you are is pretty important. It's just my laptop. And then your private key. So UI is where we're going to be putting a React app, obviously, or the React component to our app. Testing is for test-driven development. And then your DNA file is just the kind of project directory. This is what actual Holochain code lives. And we're going to go into the DNA.json, which is kind of like the meta file for your project, the big overview. It kind of gives the name, the ID, the DHT config, so kind of like how do you want this to be transferred between all of the different peer-to-peers network. Progenitor would be you, just like who created the project. And then zones is, these zones are the most important part, I would say, of this entire file. It's kind of just going over the different data types and functions that will be in your application. So kind of outline, it's essentially creating the API, like what are the resources that can be accessed and what are the functions that allow you to access those resources. And so then these zones and what you're outlining here will all live in some directory. This sample entry is a piece of data that will be like entered onto your Holochain. So it's just saying, like, again, like putting the type, what's going to be within the data structure and things like that. And your sample zone.js is the actual, how you'll actually be interacting with the data that you put onto your chain. So is it a valid, get the creator, Genesis. And we're actually going to be rewriting all of this through the tutorial. So you can just go ahead and delete that right now. Okay, so this is just going through the DNA file. You can dig into it. It gets kind of granular into what each specific field of the DNA and the zones does. So the first thing that we're going to do is to start to recreate the sample zone.js, how we're going to be interacting with our Holochain. And so the first thing we're going to do is create our Genesis function. And this is what gets called every time our application gets booted up. So it is literally like the Genesis, the first thing that kind of bootstraps our entire app to become created. And so for this test example, it's a pretty basic function, and we're just returning true that our app successfully started. And these next couple functions, holotext write and holotext read, will be essentially our API, like how we are interacting and putting data onto the actual Holochain, where Genesis starts our application. Holotext write is going to be taking a piece of text and committing it using the hollow text data entry format and putting the text in, we'll get a hash back, and that will be the hash on our personal source chain where that piece of text lives. And yeah, this thing that this is a very important part when it's saying commit. This is committing it to your local chain, like my personal chain that's only running on my device. And what it's saying here is that the validate commit, which we'll get to in a second, is how each application will know that other people's data that they're interacting with is also correct. So if I were to not use the correct type of validation function, then for my commit on my device, then when your app goes to validate the commit, then it'll throw an error, and then that's how the quote-unquote consensus mechanism of Holochain works, is that everyone's checking that everyone else's code was running properly and it's running the same type of code. That it's not coming to a complete agreement on the data itself, but more of that the data is valid and has followed these certain set of rules. And so then all they want us to do is kind of just return the hash at the end of hollow text, right? I think personally, I'm a semicolon guy in my JavaScript, but and validate commit, again, like the Genesis is just a test, so we're gonna just return true, but you would have some kind of complex business logic to go along with the validate commit. That could be things like, does this user have an account of a certain type of age? Is the IP address from a valid country? It could really be anything that you could think of to validate the commit. And holotext read is also essentially the same thing as, or the exact opposite as holotext write. So where holotext write, we're committing and we get a hash back. For holotext read, we're taking a hash and we're looking on our chain to get the text back. And then this local true is just saying that we're looking on our local chain that's on our device and not on the global ledger. And so yeah, that's the basics. That's just all we need to get started. And you'd be wondering where the data model is. We still have the data model back here. This sample entry for hollow text will conform to this. We'll change that in a moment. And this is going through test-driven development, essentially just how to write tests. I'm not going to do that. You can if you want. What's a quick HC dev test? Let's just see if everything still works after I change. No, immediately fails. That's to be expected. I just deleted everything. So, and this is just going back over the sharing to DHT. So you can define with Holochain whether you want something to stay on your source chain or if you want it to become public and distributed and have be stored on other people's devices as well and be accessed by other people without you being on the network. So the DHT is essentially like the global aspects of Holochain, how everyone is able to interact with each other. And so much like validate commit is for source chains specifically, then validate put is for putting onto the distributed ledger. And so now we're going to start getting into the actual React part. Let's just make sure that everything's working. Which fails, we haven't actually. That's fine. So basically it's saying that in my DNA.json, I haven't done this sample entry create, which is correct. I actually will not be doing any sample entry create. What you can do is turn sample entry create into hollow text read and hollow And so these are just defining the functions within our DNA, so that our application will know how to find them. The calling type is JSON, we're just saying like it's a normal JSON API, and the exposure is public. And so what this means is that we're setting it so that anything that we do with these functions will be looking on the distributed ledger, I believe. I do know that for the sharing public, that does mean that it will be going to the distributed ledger, and if we made that private, then that piece of data would only ever stay in our source chains. So you can be pretty granular with it. Certain data can be public, certain data can be private within the same application. That's up to you as a developer to decide. And let me just see if my test passes again. One test failed. I'm not going to worry about it at the moment. So we're just going to do, oops, we're just going to start with the React components. It's pretty basic, actually. It's almost not even worth doing. So all you have to do is cd into your UI, and actually stay in your main directory and just do create React app on the world. And that's really it. And then all you have to do after that is just go into your Hello World, build a production build, and push it into your UI folder, and that's all it really takes to get React running up and running on Holochain. We're going to start going over how these functions will work and how we'll access them. As you can see, we'll be interacting with Holochain just through URLs and API calls, so it's nothing too crazy. Okay, and I'm just gonna okay, so that's building a production build, and all we're going to do is just add a postscript. I actually have this somewhere saved already. Boom, post build. We're just going to move it over into the UI folder. And yeah, this is the first React that I did actually a couple weeks ago. And so yeah, it's nice coming back actually, getting refresh. We can go into proxies, I guess. So what we're going to do now is just go into our source, into our app.js. And so what we're going to do is just copy over these functions that were created in Holochain. And obviously we're just going to turn these into methods. You can keep in those functions if you want, but no. And I'm a fan of Axios, so I'm just going to do yarn install Axios. Import that. And so what we're going to be doing is essentially just taking this URL and just sending a post request to it. And that's just all it takes to interact with Holochain. It's just API calls to essentially your own device. We're using a port, but if it's on Holochain itself, this is just for development purposes. It'll be running directly to your device. And so that's the basics of how you would start interacting with it. I'm really not going to deal with NPM, so I'm just going to run you guys through my old code actually. The code that already works. Seems like I have some slow internet today. So yeah, as you can see, submit post, which is our holotext writing a post. All I did, this is like a little bit more advanced, so be aware of that. Basically, I was just saving the post into a hash. I was creating like a Facebook or whatever, you know. I was saving my post into my state and then posting that to Holochain. In return, that I was saving the post hash, and then I was saving that post hash, and then that was so I could then submit and get the post from the hash. I can take this hash that I saved, post it into the database, and then I would be able to get the text back. You can see I have these hard-coded values, and that conveniently works just because I'm putting the same data in. The hash is always the same. I guess there's no stochastic method in there based on time or anything like that. And so this is a pretty good example. And this was just getting all posts if I took a map of the posts. But this is the actual UI elements, and as you can see, it's just normal React code. You wouldn't, even just like glancing over this, you wouldn't know that this was based on Holochain or any type of like new age database. It's all very basic. I'm just rendering like I normally would, just calling a function that renders some elements, just some buttons that make API calls, and yeah, that's it. It's very basic. And this is the only thing that my app was running. I'll actually show you guys. There we go. And really quickly, I'll just go over my I have like 10 billion Holochain articles. Holochain, more Holochain, Holochain, Arthur Brock, and then these are some Holochain articles that I'm writing. So stay tuned for those. So yeah, just showing you my DNA file, what it should look like for you guys in the end. It's exactly the same. Yeah, I guess you have to change your calling type to string format because we're just dealing with strings, not JSON, as I have right here. Yeah, your calling type JSON, you can just convert those to string. Your Also up here, your data format for your entry is also going to be string because that's what's being called here. But yeah, other than that, you can see that nothing much has changed. Again, this is just not that far ahead. I didn't get to crazy app development. I just didn't want to wait for, took a minute to download Axios. So yeah, my internet's pretty slow today. I just didn't want to put you guys through that. And then here is, oops, my code. This code is actually even less than what you guys have, or what I did, I should say. So yeah, this is my welcome to HoloNet. And I can just add in any posts, got some material design in. I believe there's supposed to be a hash coming up. There's no errors, internal error. Because I'm not running, yeah, so this is a good thing to go over. What you need to do is run hcdev web, and this will run a Holochain port. Right, I was just running my React without the Holochain. Yeah, so now you can see it's serving Holochain with DNA hash blah, which is whatever mine is. Right, so let's try it now. And there we go. So yeah, res.data. I still don't think my hash showed up on the screen. It's okay. Well, as you can see, the data that I get back is this hash. And then that hash is the one that you saw that I had hard-coded. You can see that I got the post from the hash too. So I should have the string somewhere. So that is my tutorial of React. Just really quick, just showing you guys how to start an app from scratch and how to get React up and running with it. It's pretty basic, and again, just like make a outside, just show you the file structure. So I just made an outside React, create React app on the side, and then just in my package.json, I just did a post build script that just pushed everything into the actual UI screen here. You can see this is the build project, production, and then yeah, just follow the exact same steps as the Holochain tutorial for Holo World. Very basic code that just gets you up and running with Holochain. So I hope you guys enjoyed and found it useful. And ping me if you have any questions on Telegram. I am Kiba Gateaux, KIBAGATEAUX. So yeah, hit me up if you have any questions. I'm in the developer channel.